Hello, welcome to Vets Coming Clean, where we ask our guests, what have you seen? I'm Peggy the Enforcer.
And I'm Granny Lisa. And tonight's special guest is Tony Landry. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Granny Lisa and Peggy. I know Peggy from Veterans Action Council. We see her a lot in the meetings.
Yeah,
Right. Um, Now, you were in the Navy from what time period?
I was in the Navy from 88 to 1994. I got out in 94.
Wow, I'm
Worked,
still older than you are.
yeah, well, I was 26 when I joined the military, so I was a little bit older
Right.
uh, than most new recruits, but I was fortunate to get the Navy's advanced electronics training and taught me how to work on advanced computers and weapon systems. So I had really, really good training in the Navy. Very proud.
Wow. So you were 26. What did you do before that?
My father ran a service a gas station, Exxon gas station. He owned it, and so I started working at 16 in the service station industry, and I stayed with that. Went to work in the oil field a little, down in Louisiana, South Louisiana. There's a lot of oil field, and so that back in the 80s, I mean, if you was able to work, you can get a job at an oil field very easily. So I did. I tried it a while and got out of that and wanted something more career wise. It's something other than oil field or gas station. So I joined. Took the military's testing and all, and qualified for that job. So
That's
very, very fortunate to get the training. It was a lot of like a year and a half of school, Navy schools, starting with the beginning electronics, and then advanced computer chips, and then you got the weapon system that you were wanted to work on. And after you got that, you got assigned to a Navy ship with that system on it. So
oh, wow.
yeah.
So,
you were on the breaking end of that industry coming into, well, because wasn't it just like exploding with information during that time period of a lot of new things were coming as soon as those computer chips were made differently and opened up many more operations for it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The weapon system that my guns I worked on it's called phalanx Gatling gun, like the old Roman army people would shoot a bunch of arrows up in the air, and that was called a phalanx of arrows. So our system shot a bunch of bullets up in the air at missiles when they coming out the ship, but it
Right.
replaced an old missile system on the back of this World War II class ship frigate, and that missile system had to have a wire attached to the missiles. So nowadays they all communicate with the missiles with laser even. So
Right.
wow.
back then it was an old system. So yeah, the computers just when I was graduating in high school in the 81, I graduated. The computers just seemed to just then be getting off the ground, and the weapon I worked on a computer system on board the ship, and it had the hard drives on it were the size of a big shoebox, size 10 shoes, and they were 80 pounds, and it only stored like 80 megabytes of data, which we can fit 80 megabytes of data on just the tip of a pen today. But back then it was magnetic hard drives and big steel disc that the computer system used. So yeah, we come a long way.
That had
Wow.
to be pretty awesome to be on the ground floor with that and say that you were part of that industry.
Yes,
That's
yes.
so awesome. Now, I don't know if Peggy has any questions. So, Peggy, you know how I like to take over.
Well, no, you're fine. One question I had was with the phallic system. How many times was it pretty accurate at getting stuff before it got close to the ship, or did y'all have close calls, or how was it?
Yeah, it was good. The ship has like rings of defense around it, like 80 miles out. If there's like 10 surface air missiles uh, well, no, it'd be air to surface, I guess, because they were coming at us, right? You know, this scenario. So we'd shoot them out there. We'd shoot some other missiles out there, way out there, to try and knock some of those down. Then when it got past that, then they had a 5 mile circle where you shoot fragmenting shells, big 5-inch projectiles out there in front of the missile. Hoping one of them would run into that fragmentation and stuff and knock it
Right.
down. So, and if it got back past that, we were tracking at 5 miles, and at 1 mile, it would start shooting out 3,000 rounds a minute. Every second, they had 60 rounds that would go off. It was an electronic firing mechanism that would bring the projectile up there, and it'd do it like, just super fast. But it would shoot these projectiles out there in front of it would track the missile and the projectiles, like you think of a water stream of water on a hose. You're shooting a stream of water and you're trying to hit somebody. Well, you're going to look at them and you're going to bring that water stream to them. And that's how the system was designed. And it was very accurate. It's the last realm of defense of the ship. If it got past those 5-inch shells, you were hoping your system was going to knock down the missile before it hit us.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Now, we have a question here. I'm going to read it because I can't look at it and remember it. Ask him about testing them with drones being pulled behind airplanes.
Yes, that absolutely did that. The system has to be calibrated, and it has tests that it had to go through. This is a brand new weapon system, so we had to do these weapon system tests on it. And
Right.
that was one of the tests that the jet would let out this mile-long cable, we told, with this fluorescent 8-10 foot sleeve, like plastic sleeve, fiberglass. It would drag that behind the jet, and when the jet would cross the ship, we were out at sea. The pilot would say, "Okay, I'm past," and our pilot would tell us to turn our system on anti-air warfare automatic. And the mount, at this particular time, I was actually the mount safety observer. We had to have somebody at the mount to make sure that everybody wanted to see the CWI, as we call it, close in weapon system. Everybody wanted to see it fire, because it was really, really a marvelous amount of firepower when it go off. But yeah, that drone sleeve, our mount started tracking it. When it got in the range, it fired, and the pilot of the Learjet was like, "Golly, jerking my teeth out up here because of the force from when our gun was hitting that sleeve. It was making the jet,
Oh no.
Oh my
top
God.
midair." He's like, "Man." So we knew it was hitting, and then you can actually see pieces of it floating down from way up there. So
It
we knew.
almost sounds very familiar to a system that I thought the Israelis had created for their state on protection, is their anti-missile protection. It's
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and now they have lasers that do the job of like, remember I was explaining that early missile system. Well, now the gun's being replaced with a laser beam, so won't even have to have the projectiles and all the gun maintenance and all that. Just remove all that and slap a laser in there, and it still has the radars where it can search and track and fire. Pretty much everything else stays the same, I reckon, and except for the laser. But
Yeah. Wow,
Wow.
that's crazy. Well, that's really cool. Now, I'm going to jump subjects because I love doing that. When you got out and from getting out to now, you are a huge advocate for veteran medical cannabis. Were you hurt or experienced anything from the time of service to now that made you want to pursue this? And or was it something that you've always done cannabis in the past and now you want to make sure that veterans have the access to be able to use it as part of their health?
Yeah, yeah. Well, kind of both of them. I, experimented with cannabis when I was in my early age, but of course we had to couldn't go to boot camp with cannabis in you, so I made sure I'd stopped before. And then while I was active duty, I didn't. I had children. I had three children, while I was serving. One when I went in, and two more while I was active duty. So I refrained from any cannabis use whatsoever for 6 years. And when I got out of the military, I left with some back injuries just from work related, like heavy lifting type injuries to my back, and had about a handful, half a dozen times in 6 years maybe that I had trouble with my back. I had to go to medical. So when I got out, I was service connected, and then I went to work on copy machines because I tried getting work in computers. They didn't have the little Gatling gun, on the outside, so I had to find something.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah,
fair
so
enough.
the computer thing didn't work out, but the copy machines were a lot of mechanical parts, and which my weapon system fit right into that. So it was just a matter of going to a couple schools. I got hired on as a copy tech, and went to a couple schools to learn about the machine, and did that for 3 years, and ended up in that period of time, had my back kept on bothering me, and then one day actually felt like something popped in it, when I was moving a copy machine, and had a couple back surgeries, and the opiate that they gave me for pain, they eventually your body builds a tolerance to it, and it's not really working anymore. So
Yeah.
that's what happened, and so I kind of went into just using over the counter stuff, or whatever, and alcohol. A lot of alcohol use was main because of the pain, just trying to escape the emotional pain,
Right,
or physical pain, and that eventually led to just addiction to alcohol, and addiction to opiates. And I was like, man, I got to stop, this. So I tried, did a lot of reading because I was home a lot with my
yeah.
back in, and I read about CBD oil, and
Oh,
that's what started me into cannabis advocacy. I started my group, Louisiana Veterans for Medical Cannabis, after using the CBD and not having to take aspirin or anything. I said, well, I'm gonna work on this to help other people, not
right.
just.
Absolutely.
Makes sense to me. I
Yeah.
apologize. The hospital life continues on, so they brought me room service. So uh,
So you said the Louisiana Veterans for Medical Cannabis. What
mhm.
what all do you do with that? You've got a YouTube channel with it.
Yeah, I don't have a website. I don't, because I never really, I don't have any funding, like it's not a nonprofit. I don't have any t-shirts, hats, or anything to sell or anything. I use that as to promote bills when during the legislative session, they'll come out with a bill. So I'll screenshot it or something, or put links to it on my social media pages so that other people will be aware of it. And then, ask for like an email campaign. I'll post, legislators, how to find your legislator. You put in your zip code, and they give you the emails and that. Just use it to promote advocacy, so that it helps, people. the government looks at all those algorithms when people start, when you post something, and so psychedelics right now, I'm trying to promote psychedelic use in Louisiana for addiction and depression, anxiety.
Right.
So, I'll post a video and somebody watches it and they're like, well, I want to learn more about that. Let me go to Google and search that. So the government watching all those numbers and the analytics, and they see that there's about a big bunch of hits on psychedelic in Louisiana. What's going on down there? And it's that damn Tony Landry doing making that. You know? So I just use my social media for that.
Yeah.
I try and drive public opinion, or maybe not public opinion, or just raise awareness to issues that are important to veterans. Because the VA studying psychedelics and cannabis and all, and there's still a lot of people that are living in the Nixon era stigma. That they think that it's bad news.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I agree with you, Tony. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but microdosing psilocybin saved my life. I had been put on Deluxetine or Cymbalta by the VA, and they didn't properly. They stopped my dosage and then said you're done. Well, they're actually supposed to count the beads in that medication and drop my bead number by every so many days to get off of it. They didn't do that with me, which made me spiral out of control with suicidal ideation and had withdrawals real bad with brain zaps and all kinds of problems. And microdosing one time stopped all of that, all the withdrawals, all the serotonin syndrome, and my depression has been stabilized and everything. And it's amazing what a natural plant can do.
I would always, I don't know. That is going, I mean, I don't care if it's public or not. I'm 61. What you can do to me? I'm going to try that because I think that it's healed Peggy. And I don't know if you've known her before all of this. It sounds like you have. Um, but she was in horrible, horrible, and when they sent her home and she was even worse and everything, it was like they just said, we're sending you home to die. And it was crazy. It was crazy. I hadn't known her very long, but I was already connected to her. So I was always kind of worried, what's going on? Why are they doing this? And then one day she comes on and she's different, but she's still Peggy. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And she wasn't sitting in the dark because Peggy always sat in the dark when she came online FaceTime. She didn't want anybody to see her. And so she wasn't in the dark. And I'm actually like, well, there you are. I can actually see you instead of just off and on with the shadows. And it just kept changing. And I'm not asking anything because I figured, well, I'm old school. You don't ask, on medical, personal things like that. And so she's starting to really make sense, before she was stuttering and all of that. So I'm really curious on trying that. I've been um, doing more of the cannabis, yes, and everything. But I'm so new. It's still very amazing to me, almost like unbelievable on the stories I've heard. But because I have seen it in her life, it makes me think, well, it has to work in others. So why is it not available to us?
Well, I mean, Nixon put all that on the Schedule One in the '70s, and there was a lot of studies before all that in the '50s and stuff. There's a lot of studies on using psilocybin for addiction. They even had a study to give prisoners or on the reentry program psilocybin. It's called the Concord study, and how it reduces recidivism from them going back to prison. because it probably addresses the root cause of the trauma that caused them to go to prison in the first place. When you take the psilocybin, it increases the neuroplasticity in your brain, and it's able to form new pathways around those trauma areas and stuff. And so, I mean, it's right now it's fast tracked for approval. So it will be within the next 2 to 5 years, you'll see MDMA and psilocybin. You'll be able to go to your doctor and get some microdose caplets of psilocybin and go home. Right now, what's missing is the structure framework of psychedelic psilocybin retreat centers. In most of these states, kind of they'll like cannabis, they just make high cost licenses and let the dispensaries open, but not a lot of whole support with cannabis on how to make home tinctures and balms and
No.
oils. You got to go to YouTube or something like that. And Arizona, they had a pretty good cannabis community because they had medical for 10 years when I was there, and we actually got full adult use while I was there. Worked on a ballot initiative and got that. But there was more of a community. You had like events where a cannabis chef would go and teach you how to infuse foods and stuff with cannabis oils, and it's just a lot better. And with the psilocybin community, there's a long ceremonial history of using psilocybin, but that's kind of been driven underground. It's not common knowledge. So, you don't want people just to grab some psilocybin pills and go home and take them. You want them to have a community support. Like out in Tucson, we had a psilocybin Tucson Psychedelic Society where you'd learn about the plants, and then you had an integration group. So if you went and took ayahuasca at the ayahuasca church in Tucson, you could kind of hang with this group once a month and talk about your experiences and kind of help you through that. But you don't get all that with with pharmaceuticals. It's kind of just masking your problem, just like, here, go home. Even with the therapist, it's like on a time thing, like at 50 minutes, like, oh, okay, time's up, go home. So it's not, it's different than the plant medicine community. It's more community based, where everybody's kind of sticking together. So I envision where you can go to a yoga center, 20, 30 people could go on a Friday evening and bring their mat and have somebody, a facilitator working in there, and be able to help administer the mushrooms to the community at large. So a lot of people can't afford to go the medical process through the doctors and go like the Oregon model. I think it's $3,000 to go get psilocybin, treatment. So this more community based is more. It's like traditional way psychedelics were used. When warriors would come back from war, they'd gather in circles in the community and give them the medicine and heal, and help them through that. And just not seeing that as much in the pharmaceutical model as I think will be available with a community-based, psilocybin retreat centers and stuff like that. So yeah, why is it's still illegal? There's probably same reason a lot of cannabis is illegal. The pharmaceutical industry, the alcohol industry, tobacco, psilocybin being studied for tobacco cessation. I mean, all those people are going to lose a lot of money when psilocybin's available for treating addiction, depression, anxieties. So yeah, it's part of the reason why there's some opposition against legalizing it.
Right, because like veterans in my position who would like to try it has no clue what the effects will be, what your may experience, or whatever. You hear this wonderful things about it, but because of the fear of what could be the opposite, and you being alone, having to deal with that, you're like, okay, this isn't wise for me to take. Like you just said, you don't want to do it when you're by yourself. You want to be with somebody who knows what they're doing. And what about the product itself? how do you know if you run into somebody and they have the product? How do you know if it's a good product?
Yeah, yes. Well, some of the states are that have decriminalized it are offering testing where you can test the potency of the psilocybin in the mushrooms, and uh, but it's pretty easy once you get the basic technology down. You can buy the grain bags with the substrate all in one bag with it's got an air patch for the mushrooms to breathe. So you just take the spores and inject them in that bag, and they can basically self-contained. You'll have mushrooms, in your house. So we can down in Louisiana, we can actually grow they give us a list of 36 hallucinogenic plants, and some of them are common. The mimosa tree, down here in Louisiana, it has DMT in the roots, so it's a hallucinogenic plant if you process the root. But other than that, you can give somebody a mimosa tree, and you're good, as long as you're just using it for landscaping and decorative purposes. And mushrooms is in that list, so we can actually grow psilocybin mushrooms in Louisiana legally, as long as we're not putting them into capsules and having ceremonies. And so that's what I'm working on right now, is try and get a bill sponsored to set up those clinics where people can actually and decriminalize the mushrooms for growing for any use for in your home. Now if
Right.
you want to have a ceremony, a clinic, then there's facilitator training that you can go to and get the certification of how to, because like you said, you want to make sure you're right, you're in the right set and setting. Like your mindset, you don't want to watch a bunch of scary movies the day of your ceremony, or get in an argument or have some upsetting thing. You want to be in the right mindset and set your intention before the ceremony and go into it as I'm going to go in and work on my addiction issues. I want to get that out of the ceremony. You set that intention, but all that comes with having this framework set up to where you have your pre-ceremony or pre-clinical psychedelic experience. Somebody's coaching you through the pre thing, and then you go into a right area where you in a safe space and somebody knowledgeable in the medicine, because oftentimes you'll revisit some traumatic event that happened in maybe even childhood. It'll surface up during the ceremony, and that brings up a lot of emotion and stuff. So you want to have somebody that's been trained as a facilitator that they can say, help you through that, just talk you through it. But yeah, that's all things that need to happen in every state. We're having, this crisis, mental health crisis across the U.S. right now. So every state's suffering with overdose and addiction, and these plants, psychedelic plants, can help them. They help them all.
Peggy, did you have anything?
I actually agree with Tony. I'm interested to see, since recently, our commander in chief said that they were going to allow the military to have it. If how long it'll be before the veterans start seeing it from the VA.
Wait a minute. You said the active duty can have it?
They dropped a thing the other day, yeah, and they're testing it. What was it, for PTSD and traumatic brain injuries? Was it, Tony? Was what the report said?
Yep, actually going to test it on active duty troops. So I mean that's great. Like we were saying, like with cannabis, even that Israel has a high THC nasal inhaler thing that whenever somebody's suffering TBI or something, THC is a neuroprotectant. They give them a big dose right into their nasal cavity to calm the inflammation in their brain. So maybe psychedelics, if somebody comes back from a bad mission, lost a buddy or something, maybe they can get them right out of the trenches and get them in there and give them a ceremony or a clinical application of psychedelics, and that might help them out, because there's a lot of active duty to commit suicide too, and that's something.
Yeah.
times that's what's happening.
It's almost as if it resets the nervous system and takes the person out of fight or flight mode when it's used properly.
Well,
Absolutely.
because it sounds like if you have experienced people and they can work out, I mean it's not a miracle cure just the first time, because I mean it's something that's gone on over time. I mean, to me that's just the way it goes, but it sounds like a no-brainer. So for me that suffers from MST and then childhood MST, um, and then just regular PTSD, I guess. I don't know. Why can't they just, anyway? This would be ideal for me because I have blocked, and yet I get those terrors from that blocked stuff. So when you do it, how it helps with your addiction, right?
Yeah. Well, the first time I experienced psychedelics was in Tucson. I went to the 2019 Arizona Psychedelic Conference, and I've never even, leaving Louisiana, I've never even heard of ayahuasca and peyote and ibogaine and all these psychedelic plants, and so after hearing about it and finding out they had a place in Tucson, a church actually does the ceremonies, then I checked into it and went because I was struggling with alcoholism. The medical cannabis is helping me not drink quite as much, but it was that intense craving that alcohol was always like, oh, when can I drink next, and the ayahuasca just turned that off one night. The first night I ever experienced it, it was like somebody took a big key and put it in my brain and said, you don't need alcohol anymore. And I mean, from that morning, it lasted about 3 years, that I didn't even have a desire to drink alcohol. And
Wow.
Wow.
I moved back to Louisiana. Kind of had a little relapse, start going through a divorce and all. And I said, well, let me just have a little bit of beer. And my personality makeup, I can't do that. I know now that I can't have just one and like some people, I'm going to want one the next day. So I went back since then, I guess about 6 months ago, back to that same ayahuasca retreat center, and I had some ayahuasca again. And it just, like I said, it's like somebody just turns off the craving just with that one. And ibogaine, the same way. Say you could basically pull a heroin needle out of your arm and get ibogaine and not have the physical withdrawals of heroin, and just overnight just not want it anymore. So
Really? I did not know that.
That,
yeah.
so just like how you don't really see, people say, oh, I'm addicted to cannabis. I don't know. I've heard just the opposite, that you don't get addicted. You may get addicted to the smoking sensation or however you do it. Um, but the cannabis itself is not addictive.
No, that's what I've always heard too. Just a physical addiction of the smoking and stuff, which kind of similar to smoking cigarettes. Whenever I
Yep.
quit, I used to smoke when I was younger, and that was the first. After I took them out of my pocket, I was still going for my shirt pocket whenever I got into stressful situations. So it's kind of a physical part of the addiction. But
Right.
yeah, cannabis. When I was addicted to opiates and that during my back surgeries,
Yeah.
that addiction, when you don't get it the next, you're out of pain pills, and the next day, that was a horrible addiction. And I've never experienced that with cannabis. If I'm out the next day, I'm like, hot dog, it's time to go to the store and get some more, But the opiate withdrawal, when you were going through like 3 days of the worst flu you ever could experience, So
Yeah.
a whole
No
lot.
side effects when you don't have your cannabis. It's a big difference.
Yeah, yeah, your body's not that doesn't make you go through all that detox like opiates on
Well,
cannabis.
you're talking about cannabis. Wanted to ask you, what brought you to the Veterans? When did you come to the Veterans Action Council? And you've been doing stuff there in Louisiana with the cannabis too, or?
Yeah. I met ATN and all them when I left Louisiana and moved to Arizona to Tucson. I started advocating in Arizona, and ATN, being from Louisiana, reached out and uh, said, "Hey, we're having this buddy check, you know." So it just kind of started out as that, and going to the meetings, the virtual meetings on Zoom. I was in Arizona and worked with them, you know, at the UN. They did some work at the UN and microcrowds, and uh, learned a lot from the VAC through the years, and you know, advocated with them in DC last September. So just being a veterans, of camaraderie of the other vets, and we all have something in common. We all advocates, and so we all kind of learn from each other. Whenever we have our meetings, I'll always give them an update on Louisiana, and um, tell them, you know, what's going on, and that's what's interesting too. Our meetings, people are all over the country, veterans, and we have one of my members, a international veteran, Nate Landau. So it's just a matter
Wow.
of, yeah. So I mean, it's very eye opening. Get to learn about veterans all over the world, on how the Canadian veterans getting cannabis. Their disabled vets get cannabis from the Canadian VA. So we're trying to work things out where we can get those, our VA and them talking together. So we do some really high level advocacy on international and national level, and the local level is just you know, me and whoever else I can get to join in at the Capitol, and but you know, we'll hash out things. We'll meet 3 times a week with the VAC, and we'll have you know, if I have an issue in Louisiana and I need help, we can all brainstorm together and come up with the strategy to help each individual state. So that's why I
Right.
like to see. But yeah, just I started out back in right at the beginning of the inception of the VAC. In fact, I remember some of the early meetings we talked about the name, what we're going to name, you know, the veterans group, and they've come out with Veterans Action Council, because we all have our own kind of position in each state, and we come together as a council, you know, to take action on national and international stuff. So yeah, I'm very proud to be in the VAC, and like I said, I learned something all the time, every time, you know, on cannabis history and cannabis activism history, and so we got a lot of the years of experience in that group. So
Absolutely. I've learned a lot since I've been with you guys, and you guys have helped me a lot with my PTSD so far. I mean, a whole lot. Granny can tell you that.
I remember when she wouldn't even talk in front of other people, or yeah, and now look at her. She's doing a podcast.
she's doing her own podcast. Yeah, yeah.
Very proud of her.
They keep us busy, huh, Peggy? We always got something to think about and keep our mind going, and knowing that it's historical work. Most of the work we do, you know, you look back through history, there's only a handful of people that were doing stuff like that, and we're in there doing it. So
Yeah, because when you think of activism or anything like that, you watch the TV and immediately you see the opposite of what activism is. It's, you know, now turned into destroying, hatred, and definitely no education. So, how do you guys deal with that when you're coming across young people on teaching them what you're doing and needing their support because, you know, they smoke, they enjoy the benefits of it. So, how do you draw in the younger crowd to be able to, carry on the legacy.
Who you asking me, Granny?
Yeah, anybody.
Oh, it's we try. I mean, it's difficult. It seems like the younger college age students, they don't want to get involved in anything that might affect their career. If they get photographed at a home grow rally, then maybe some cannabis company won't want to hire them because they want to grow all the cannabis and get us to buy it from them. I mean, but it's lot law enforcement that has a lot of pressure on folks. They don't want to stick their neck out. They sat perfectly fine with just smoking whatever they have. And just it's not in everybody to get out and public speak or get out and put a face on the movement. It's just not everybody has that. I think of it like I used to get upset about it. It's like, why isn't anybody have statewide events at the Capitol, and mainly just the people that are involved in the event that show up. Why is that? And I just kind of think, well, whatever, it's my calling to do this, and whoever, if I leave a trail of videos, archives behind me, and somebody in the future even looks at them and learns something, then good. I'm just gonna keep on doing, moving forward, and people do see, they see your video on YouTube or whatever, and they want to. They, from all over the country, people on TikTok will say, "Oh, we following you up in this state." When I post a video, so you just got to kind of just go at it and not worry about what's out there in front of you, or not have any fears, and just hope that you inspire people to help, because you can't do it all by yourself. Even just emailing, when you see somebody, an advocate working hard out there, and they say, hey, we need to email our legislators, we got this important bill we need to stop, or we have an important bill we need to support. People don't realize how much those emails really count, because if a legislator gets 10 emails, you got to figure each one of those 10 knew 3 people, so that's 30. And so they look at that 10 emails as a big thing. It's not like, we got 4.5 million people in Louisiana just got 10 emails. No, it's not like that. Those emails magnify themselves because they know, well, that person took it out of his day to email, then he's talking to other people. I better tune into this and pay attention.
Oh, so even though you don't want to put a face to it, there are things that you can do to be supportive in this that, doesn't necessarily give you a face of, like you said, with the police, jobs, future jobs, schooling. What other things can they do?
Well, the easiest thing, just a phone call. That's how simple is that. Everyone should have their representative's phone number stored in their phone. And whenever they see some action that they could take, it's already in there. All they got to do is call that number and leave a message in the switchboard. Please ask Representative so-and-so to support this bill because it's going to help veterans. And you'd be surprised how much they makes an impact over there at the Capitol, because they never really hear from anyone. So if there's an issue that they got 10 emails, and they say, oh, this is huge. In Arizona, they had it called request to speak. So once you register into a kiosk, your information, that you could actually comment on bills as they work their way through committees. You could be, almost like testifying. You had 250 characters that you could write something in, and it went right to the desk of those legislators who were debating these bills. So it was even more powerful than email. But these emails are, like I say, you could do a lot with email. You could add some links, some helpful links to support your 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 position, and just give them a little that pretty basic format. Just give them a little introduction. Make it like one page, a 3-minute read. Introduction, your body, your story, how this issue is affecting you, and then give them some supporting links, that say, hey, please vote for this because look, they researching it and it's helping. So
Oh,
not
I
a lot.
didn't think about that, Peggy.
Well, see, I was brought up you write them physically write, so I wasn't even considering doing emails, and because a lot of times I figure, well, that's just going to a robotic email. So somebody's actually reviewing the emails that get sent. It's not just handled by robotics. That's good to
No,
know. That's probably why a lot of people don't send emails, though, is they get that automatic response, so they don't think anybody's reading them.
no, their legislative staff will read them. In fact, if you get in good with the staff, if that legislative staff understands your cause and your reasoning and all, that's even more powerful than being, in control. I mean, in good with the legislator, because the staff really helps, interface with the public, so
Right.
if and the legislator depends on that staff member to make sure that you got a good communication. So the staff member is really important. Never underestimate what kind of difference you can get through if you develop some good rapport with the staff.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
that's anything I would believe. Um, so if you're in Louisiana right now.
yeah,
Okay,
Cajun.
so if anybody is in Louisiana and says, I can't do a whole lot, but I really support what cannabis is doing or mushrooms that are the psychedelics for our veterans. It really helped my buddy here, or it helped my husband there. Um, how would they get in touch with you personally to go, I'm willing to send an email? What do I send as an attachment? Will you
Yeah,
be able to assist them, or do you have a website that has those letters or attachments and they can just take it from there and send it with their email?
yeah. They could go to the Louisiana. Now, if you reach out, you could reach out to me, and I'll be glad to help anyone with a testimony. That just the basic structure one, but mainly it's your, like I was saying before, you little introduction. I was in the Navy, got hurt, and just give me a little story. That'll work. But you can go to the Louisiana Legislative website and put in "Find My Legislator" and actually send it directly to the legislator. But if you want to follow me on TikTok, or you can message T Cajun 420 on TikTok, or on Louisiana Trees Reddit. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We're having a big lobby day on the opening day of the Louisiana legislative session, March 11th. So we're gonna people want to come out and meet their legislator. We'll have tables set up in the Capitol Rotunda in the morning at 8, and then the governor raps the gavel at noon to begin the 2024 Louisiana legislative session. And so when they're in there, or going into the chamber, the House chamber, we'll have tables with harm reduction. Last year, I invited the lady who had harm reduction nonprofit, where she gave the Narcan out to bars and different areas free, so they have it on hand. And they invited some hemp farmers, hemp retailers. But yeah, that'll be a big, if somebody's wanting to get involved in opening day, March 11th of 2024, come out to the Capitol, and we'll meet out in Veterans Memorial Park with some speeches, and carry the flag detail, lead us over to the Capitol around 10 in the morning, and we'll just mingle in the rotunda area and answer a lot of politicians come by and see the tables and they have questions about psychedelics or cannabis, and so we're just there to ask. And by that time, we'll have all the bills. The 2024 Louisiana legislative bills will be pre-filed, so we'll know, what we trying to push and support. So
That is amazing. So a greenie like me can learn all of this and be a part of changing history, helping veterans. And I don't even say even helping veterans, just helping humanity in itself on having a healthier way of healing without the side effects, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
I don't know about anybody else. I still have the very bad anger issue, and it really bothers me because I'm learning about things that stuff follows you, and I'm thinking, I've got to have a way to deal with it because of the consequences of it. Um, you know, we
yeah,
are. So if I had access freely to be able to choose for myself on how I want to be medicated and it works, then, there's got to be more people like me out there.
Absolutely.
yeah. They are, yes. And the thing about the psychedelics is a lot like the pharmaceutical model. You have to take the pill every day just to mask the feelings. But the psychedelics is like 6 to 9 months relief. When you take them and you don't have to worry about it for 6 or 9 months. You might need another little recharge or reset. Like me, my story about the ayahuasca. I made it three plus years, but I had to go get a little reset. So
Mhm.
even if you have to do it once a year, as long as you staying updated and you got you know got some new pathways around that trauma.
Right, because it's the old stigma is, you're burning your brains. It's like an egg. You're burning your brains, and you're gonna be one of those homeless people out there, you know, just doing all those weird things if you do these drugs, and it's not that anyway. It's not. So we got to get the stigma of what cannabis is about, right? Why
Yeah,
aren't we having commercials that say this is what cannabis is about? Is it legally still?
I
Probably
think
because it's still Schedule One. They can't do
yeah,
that yet.
I think there's a federal lawsuit right now on the bans on advertising in Mississippi on advertising cannabis. I think somebody from Mississippi's got a federal lawsuit, a free speech lawsuit. But yeah, that's like Peggy said, it's been Schedule One. It's been no medical use in the categories that the worst category possible. So they don't want you advertising about it or anything. But it's detrimental to public safety. They can protect the public a lot more by having public service announcements on cannabis and psychedelics. Like um, what to do if you get too much cannabis, take some CBD and do these certain steps. That should be every health department, even the feds, should be putting that information out. Because it's important public safety information, not
Right.
just
They
like
give out needles and here, do it safely and all of that. I'm surprised that they're probably not even giving out medicine too. But I mean, you see the commercials for, all the psych meds, and you can't just buy them at the, store. You have to do it through the doctor. But they're allowed to advertise these high potency drugs like Cymbalta, which I'm on. I never knew it had the side effects or whatever that is happening. And so I'm like, really, why can't we find out the good stuff? Has anybody besides would you say Mississippi?
Yeah, Mississippi's the only one I know. We can't advertise in Louisiana for cannabis, the dispensaries and so yeah, that's the only thing. That's the only reason. It's the stigma that from 50 years of just say no and it's your brain on drugs. It's just still alive and well. And that's why I advocate. I just try and constantly put out new research data, and there's a lot of new research that's going to happen on all these on cannabis and psilocybin, in the next years coming up. So there won't be any reason why we shouldn't be able to advertise. Like I said, they should be telling us how to make the balms and the tinctures and all that at home. We should all be having home grow classes where veterans teach you how to grow cannabis and how to make, like these American Legion huts that are all shut down and stuff. They ought to open them up and make them areas where community health centers where you can go in there and learn plant medicine, how to grow these plants and consume them. That's all stuff that would help the suicide epidemic and overdose epidemic.
Oh, yeah.
All of it. So
I'm sure it would. So we're getting close to the hour. Is there anything that you would like to share that's happened to you? What have you seen? What have you experienced that you would like to share with us? And of course, our audience. We had a young man. I don't know how young, but anyway, I say young man that said it's all about the bunny when you were talking. His comment was that you would want us to learn from.
yeah, and I agree with the young man. It is about the money and advocacy down here in Louisiana. You have like 2 growers and not 10 dispensary licenses, and they let them have satellite locations. But it's like if cannabis is good enough for them to make millions of dollars and sell it to us, why isn't it good enough where we can grow it at home and use it? We shouldn't have these huge restrictions on access where it costs so much to go access it. If it's a medicinal plant, then we should have the first access should have been the people, and then the small business, and then the large corporations. But right now we have just these large multi-state operators that are trying to own up everything. Kind of like the craft beer industry. It finally come around and kind of gives them some choices, but right now with cannabis, it's like we don't have that, and so my suggestion would be just to keep getting out there, and any way it feels like you buy yourself some time advocating. Just think of it as you're helping people out that can't be out advocating. Like veterans live too far away from the capital, or they might be incapacitated at home and in bed or whatever. And by you getting out there to Capitol and advocating, you might give them a little bit of cannabis relief. If you pass a law where you have home grown and they have more access to cannabis, maybe they'll get some relief. So that's kind of what I think of it. I'm not really advocating for myself as much as I am the whole of humanity.
Right.
I know that when I was in Arizona and I got my medical cannabis card, I did not get any kind of education when I went to the dispensaries. It was either indica or I call it Stevivy. Oh my gosh. The S, either I or S.
It's sativa. Yeah.
Sativa? Is it sativa?
Yes.
Okay. And and I'd say, okay, this one keeps you up, this one keeps you asleep. Well, what about my condition? What do I need specifically? Do I need for that's going to help me and my medical condition? Well, this one's going to keep you active, and this one's going to put you more to sleep and mellow you out. Those are the only two options I heard, and I felt like I was at their mercy on the name brand that they sold me. So, is there any way we can also say, why aren't the dispensaries, if they're legal to do, why aren't they taking the time to also educate with the medical side of cannabis and not just the high and the low of it?
It's a process, Granny. That's why, and it depends on where you go. In Arkansas and in other states, they will break stuff down, and some of them have lab reports and shows you the breakdowns of what's in it and everything. It just depends on the dispensary you go to and everything. A lot of it, though, unfortunately, you have to educate yourself as the patient and do research yourself.
That's what
Because
I'm talking about. It's like if you don't know or know where to go or how to go about it, you go and you pay for this license to help you as a veteran, to help with the PTSD so you're not overwhelmed, your anxiety, all the other symptoms that you may have. And this is, the education that you get back. It's kind of, as an older senior, I was very, very frustrated. So, because it's like I'm here for not to get high, I'm here to help my medical condition on pain. And yet it felt like it was such a business that, oh, it's almost like going to the liquor store. Well, this is so much proof here. This you can mix with that, and it makes it taste much more pleasant. And yet it doesn't have this kickback of, what I'm saying, that the
yep,
differences are. So it's kind of, I feel like the dispensaries can almost be that bond between, if they were willing to educate along the way, being forced to educate and have that. I don't know, maybe I'm out there, but
No, I mean that was written into Louisiana's law because you have to be a pharmacist to even own a dispensary in Louisiana, and the whole reason they made up, oh, this cannabis is so dangerous, we got to make sure it's a pharmacist to be able to distribute it, and they're gonna take the patient and give them a consult and tell them all about this. And I had a elderly veteran friend of mine called the other day. He said, "Look, doctor, I need his back surgery. He's in his 80s, and he said the doctor said, well, I can't do the surgery because you're going to end up dying. It was such an extensive surgery. He said you just need to deal with the pain because this surgery is so intensive. You're going to end up probably dying on the surgery." So he said, Tony, he said the only thing you can try is marijuana. But he said, I don't know what to do with it or not. I got the gummies, and he said, but I don't know anything else. The doctor said, get some gummies. He said, I gave it to the pharmacist. So they're not even doing the consults when they're mandated by law to do it down here in
right,
Louisiana. And it basically turned into the liquor industry, like you said, Peggy. Granny, they look at everything by the potency. They sell these vape pens with just THC in them, where you're missing all the minor cannabinoids, a lot of medicinal benefit from the plant. It gets stripped right out and just put into THC because that's what everybody feels, the high feeling.
mm-hmm.
But in terms of as a medicine, you need all the minor cannabinoids, and you might need more of one like CBG or CBN. You might want a little more of that to make you sleep better or what have you. But
Right.
that's the stuff that the dispensary, doesn't seem to me in other states or in Louisiana, they just don't seem to be looking at it, that probably just costs them too much money to do all that. So they just want you to come in and get you, your cannabis and go.
Yeah, it's a big business.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yes, it's good because they're there because of some people that can't get it at all. But on the other hand, it's still a slap in the face for those that are going to soon be off opioids all over and are going to be lost without pain relief. Personally, I would go to a liquor store and say, okay, what's this proof going to be doing to me compared to if I drink this beer, and how long will it last? You know what I mean? Because most people know this stuff. And then going to a medical dispensary because they're just going to sell me things to get me high and not help me. And I did do what they gave me, and I was either sitting in the recliner and just, either zombie or just not even functionable. That I had to smoke that much to where I didn't care about my pain. And then I'm like, man, that doesn't last very long. And then somebody said, well, that's probably because you're not taking the right stuff. I'm like, well, what's the right stuff? So anyway, just coming from a different point of view, you guys have probably all heard way too much.
No, I mean that's exactly right. You want to basically supplement with a CBD, a full spectrum organic grown CBD oil with all the cannabinoids. Get that first, and then when you do the medical cannabis, it'll kind of complement that. It'll help you pain a lot more.
But isn't the CBD oil just to what you put on your hands and where your pain is, or do you take it like the liquid and take a teaspoonful?
Yeah, different methods of delivery, but what I'm talking about is specifically the oil that you put under your tongue. It's they extract the oil. Now you can get some of that oil in balm that they put a little few drops in the balm, and when you rub the balm on, it goes through your skin. But this is basically you put it under your tongue and it absorbs through the capillaries underneath your tongue, and it'll help. Like I was saying before, they strip. A lot of times you get just a high THC in this cannabis flower you buy at the dispensary. They breeding it just for the high THC level. So the minor cannabinoids get bred out of the plant. So you're not getting all those. And they work all in an entourage effect all together. So that's what I always recommend people get you a full spectrum organic grown hemp CBD oil, and make sure you got enough of that in you every day. And then when you smoke the cannabis, it'll be a lot better experience.
Oh, never even heard of that. See there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are the educations that you need to have on commercials. If you're going to be doing medical cannabis for your first time, this is what we recommend.
I agree.
Well, Tony, we had a conversation before the show. My question to you is, if I were to ask you to come on, maybe some other time in the future, and we can act, because I was trying to grow portobello mushrooms for cooking, and I had a horrible experience because I didn't understand the sterilization process and all that stuff. I didn't know if you'd be interested maybe sometime coming on in the future and talking about that stuff, just the process.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. I'm just amateur, by all means. But once you learn the process, the sterilization and all, it's pretty easy growing. The
Okay.
I grow the lion's mane. I can go to Whole Foods and get a mushroom off their cooler shelf, bring it home, put it in that steel air box behind me, and take a agar plate, which is just a nutrient rich, like looks like Jello. It's in a little petri dish, and you take a little piece of that mushroom and put it on that petri dish and seal it off with some tape, and you'll have some mycelium growth and be able to transfer that in a grain jar and then transfer the grain jar into some wood pellets soaked in water, and actually grow lion's mane like it's a log. You made like a log with the wood pellets, and
Yeah.
yeah, that I've done that here in this room right here.
That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know there's a lot of veterans out there that I've talked to that actually use mushroom supplements, like the lion's mane. What was that one that we were getting for you, hon? It started with an A.
Um,
I can't even remember. Anyway, it actually helped with nerve rebuilding.
Yeah, the lion's mane rebuilds the mycelium sheath around your nerves. Whenever you get older and stuff, you lose some of that protective coating around the nerve, and it rebuilds that. They've studied mice. Paul Stamets has a real good video on YouTube. You can look him up, but he gave some mice a neurotoxin that kind of made them. Once they observed their behavior in the beginning, then they gave them the neurotoxin. They noticed a different behavior. Then they gave them the lion's mane, and they got the behavior back. They were interested about the toy. The first part of the study, and then they gave them the neurotoxin. They're like, no, we ain't even gonna check the toy out. But then give them some lion's mane, and it rebooted them back to their original thing. So yeah, lion's
Wow.
mane.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
Paul Stamets has a stack, they call it, when you take different neurotropic drugs called the stack, and you take a little bit of niacin that increases the blood flow, and then you take a small dose of psilocybin with the lion's mane, and they all kind of work in conjunction. And there's a lot of research going on right now with psilocybin and how it helps mental health issues. So.
That's awesome.
good.
Really good.
Well, guys, do you guys have any more questions? 'Cause I imagine Tony's probably tired himself. I think, weren't you sick not too long ago yourself?
Yeah.
'Cause I know me and my wife have been dealing with being flu stricken. So
Knock on wood, I'm pretty healthy.
Thank
Yay.
you so much for joining us tonight, Tony. We really, really appreciate it. I don't have any more questions tonight. I'm having a hard time hearing, as Mike said, we're dealing with getting over COVID and flu. Granny, do you have anything else?
Oh no, I'm good. You know me. I'd keep us on for another 2 hours.
Well, thank
All
y'all for
right.
inviting me. It was such a pleasure to be on the show, and I look forward to coming back on.
Awesome.
Thank-
Absolutely do too. I think it's going to be exciting talking about cultivating. So
Absolutely. Well, everybody, if you like what you've seen, remember to subscribe and share. If you see something, say something. Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.
take care, everybody.
Good night.